We're a week from Election Day, and three big races are defining the final stretch. In New York City, the mayor's race has turned into pure political drama. Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa are hammering frontrunner Zohran Mamdani, who's firing back by reminding voters of Cuomo's scandals. In Virginia and New Jersey, Abigail Spanberger and Mikie Sherrill are testing whether a centrist national security brand still wins in swing states. And in California, Prop 50, the so-called screw Trump measure, is surging. On paper, it's about redistricting, but Democrats are selling it as payback against Trump and Texas Republicans. Jess, can Cuomo's last-minute appeal to Republican and independent voters close the gap? What do you think? What's your prediction for New York? You're on the ground there. What's the vibe?
The vibe at the polls is older, which is what Andrew Cuomo wants. Really? And it'll be interesting if this really does turn out. I mean, it's just early voting. And
it's like the No Kings protest.
A little older and whiter and definitely Jewish. Hi, guys. This video is just a preview of the full episode, which you know because it's only a few minutes long. So there's so much more goodness over on the Raging Moderates YouTube channel. We hope that you will click on the link. There should be like a pop-up, QR code, all the fancy stuff. To get over there, please like, subscribe, be part of our community. Scott and I are just loving having our own channel. So yeah, youtube.com/@Raging Moderates. You know, Mamdani's odds of winning were at 95% a couple days ago. It's down to 90% right now, which, you know, still seems like pretty good odds, but it is trending down. I think that Eric Adams dropping out had more of an impact than some folks expected. There was a new poll out from Suffolk University, and Cuomo's now just down 10 points, which is still a lot of points, but moving in that direction. And he's winning voters age 45 plus. And with seniors, he is +4, only +1 with the 45 to 54-year-old bracket. So that's basically, you know, break even, but it is moving in that direction. I think that, I don't know, I don't want to be the person that says that somebody who had this kind of a historic primary win and seems to have all this enthusiasm. I'm sure you saw at least social clips of that rally that he had in Queens over the weekend with Bernie and AOC. I mean, that's a presidential looking rally. It's not a mayoral election rally. And part of that is that Bernie and AOC were there, of course. But there's so much vibe, so much enthusiasm going into this campaign. But vibe and enthusiasm doesn't always vote in the same way. This is something that happened to Bernie, right, in the 2016 primary, that there are a lot of people who are interested, politically active, but are not necessarily turning out for these things or walking around wearing swag, and they show up at the polls and they vote. And those people in the primary voted for Hillary Clinton and not Bernie Sanders. I think it would really kind of upend all of the regular thinking about how elections work to say that Andrew Cuomo was going to pull this out. But David Shore, who's an incredible pollster elections analyst, numbers guy, he posted that Cuomo can win and may win. And that is breathing new life into their campaign. They are acting like they are actually running for something, which is nice to see. It's like a proof of life situation. Though I do want to note that some of the ways that it's manifesting itself, like the blatant Islamophobia that is flying around now, you know, people posting images of planes going into the Twin Towers and saying, you know, like, vote like your life depends on it. And I know that Cuomo, when he was on Sid Rosenberg's radio show, was not the one who said, you know, like, Mamdani would be happy about another 9/11. Cuomo was trying to talk about, can you imagine a scenario where someone, a 34-year-old with no executive experience, is doing this? But that is lighting people up. And people are hearing that warning call that this is somebody, for the folks that deal in Islamophobia, that they're conscious of that, but also a lot of people, Republicans, Sliwa supporters, big donors, that are saying, we just can't have this guy. And Sliwa quit his radio show. Did you see this? Like live on air. He had Katsimatidis on, who owns the channel as well and is his boss, who told him to drop out. And he, like, you know, did the thing, pulled his mic off and was like, F you, like, I'm not dropping out. And Katsimatidis, like a lot of powerful people in the city, are scared about what a Mamdani administration would look like. What's your view from the other side?
There's a quote I saw that was so resonant with me. And it said, you don't have to have an opinion on everything. Every issue does not demand your judgment. And you get a little bit of a platform and a little bit of positive affirmation, and you feel as if you have to weigh in on everything. And I've been infected with that. And I'm trying to be more disciplined lately about I don't have to have an opinion on everything. I don't have to weigh in. And the New York mayoral race, I'm not a New York resident. I'm a Florida resident living in London. I have very strong connections to New York because I teach at NYU and I lived there for 10 years. And not only that, I don't know if you felt this way, but I've had some of my Jewish friends weigh in and say, why aren't you more vocal about the race? Which is their way of saying, why aren't you more vocal against Mamdani? I feel like this is a race about, quite frankly, who can make sure the subways work and the trash is collected and that the city grows its tax base and continues to attract people that are the smartest, best, and brightest so we can have an amazing city and that it's worth a 13% incremental tax rate. And I don't want the mayor, quite frankly, commenting on or going to Israel. I don't give a shit what they think. I mean, some of the things that Mamdani has said and the people he has endorsed, I would not, if I were a New York resident, I could not vote for him. I think some of the things he has said or the things he has endorsed, his refusal to call for Hamas to lay down their weapons, he highlights, Palestinian people being killed, which is obviously horrific, the same day that Hamas pulls people out of their homes who are suspected of collaboration and executes them. Those are disqualifying for me. Where I think he won the race, from an outsider standpoint, I'm good at business predictions. I'm terrible at political predictions. So my prediction is I don't think there's any way he can lose. I saw that rally you saw, and I'm like, that kind of enthusiasm gets people to the polls in the rain when they're late for work. That gets the turnout. I don't see how, quite frankly, how we can lose. But this has become so divisive. And what I say to my Jewish friends who don't live in New York is this really your fight? And I don't think the mayor is going to single-handedly promote or antagonize Jewish or Israeli interests. I don't think this is the hill we want to die on. And when I say we, I mean the diaspora here. And also, I don't think it's fair what has, some of the allegations against him, I think have been a little bit unfair. At the same time, like I said, a lot of the shit he said would be totally disqualifying for me. And a member of our team, who shall remain nameless, summarized it. We have a mayoral race between a handsy 60, 70-year-old and an anti-Semite. That's where we are. That this is just not a great place to be in, I think, for New York voters. And also, I don't think it helps that all these rich white people are coming out against him. I think they've done more for him than they've actually hurt him, despite all their money. Your thoughts?
I largely agree. I think, I've been listening to a lot of what the rabbis are saying from major synagogues across the city, and they are deeply concerned about the impact that Mamdani will have on the city and the protection of Jewish life here. And we talked about this before, that the one question, if Mamdani had wanted to come on the pod, but he didn't. But what I would like to ask him is, let's pretend that you were mayor when the college protests are going on Columbia's campus.
Great question.
What do you do differently?
It's a great question.
And I think that opens up the door to explain his perspective, how he came to it, to also talk about civil rights infringement, which I definitely think happened to Jewish students on those campuses, and how he would have managed that. And I think that would have gone a long way in kind of, alleviating people's fears about this. I tend to agree with you, like watching the markets and could Cuomo pull this off? I guess so. David Shore would know better than I would. But what I'm concerned about is if that does miraculously happen, that Cuomo wins, what happens to the city? Because you have all of these working people, for all the things that people are concerned about that they want their mayor to do, the number one thing, and what he's been talking about, is can New York City become a place that working people can live and thrive in again? And if you look around at, cost of living, standard of living here in the city, it is not a good place to be if you are a working person. And his campaign has been focused on that. So if, a bunch of older, wealthier people show up and stamp out that light, right, and basically say, we're just going back to the old way of doing things, someone that even in endorsements of Andrew Cuomo, like the Daily News endorsed him, but they said, like basically he's a bad guy, but he's better for this job. The New York Times had said the same thing. That further depresses people, their mental health wise, certainly, but it separates us into these buckets even more. And income inequality is one of the biggest problems that we're facing. And we basically just say, oh, you had a whole movement? Well, now you're going to show up and we're going to stamp that out too. I wanted to get your take, though. So Virginia and New Jersey are very different races to what's going on in New York. You have two very moderate candidates in Mikie Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger. I think both will win. Mikie Sherrill's race will be a bit closer. Spanberger, I think, could be quite big, kind of, close to 10 points in terms of her advantage. And she may very well pull the AG candidate, Jay Jones, the one who sent the violent text messages, over the line. But we'll see about that. A lot of people who have more moderate politics would like to talk about those races much more than they want to talk about Mamdani and what it says about the Democratic Party. So what are your thoughts about that dichotomy?
Look, yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent. Those are more important races. I just want to make another comment about New York. And then, quite frankly, you just have deeper domain expertise about these races, so I want to get your view on them. Just circling back to New York for a second, there's a new Rosewood here in London, and it's amazing. And it's so wonderful and so nice, and there's a new Carbone in it. It's amazing. The problem is you have to be rich to do anything, to stay at the Rosewood or go to the restaurants there. I think New York is in a golden age. When I go to New York, I can't get over how good it is. I live in Soho, or I have a place in Soho. New restaurants, I feel like post-COVID, the city shed its skin. I don't see very many homeless. I see new clubs, new members clubs. But here's the thing, I have money.
Yeah.
And I think New York has become the Rosewood of cities, and that is, it's amazing. But when I first came to New York out of UCLA, I lived with two roommates in a shitty one-bedroom apartment. We used to pool our vouchers after work. We got a voucher for a car and a certain per diem of like $25. And between all of us, we could go downtown to I think it was called the Surf Club or the Shark Club, or we could go to and we could, not making a ton of money, but making some money, have really fun lives. And I had friends who were artists. I had friends who were musicians playing backup music at jazz. And they could dance between the raindrops and try and make a go of it. There's no fucking way now.
Nope.
There's only three types of people in Manhattan right now. You're either in tech, you got transferred here, or you work for Meta or Google or a technology company that's overfunded and they can pay you $200,000 to $300,000 a year. You're working for JP Morgan or Goldman, you're in finance, or your parents are putting you through New York. There is no scrappiness. It's just not possible. We talk a lot about income inequality, and we tend to couch income inequality as someone who's like making $50,000 a year and their wife gets diagnosed with lung cancer, and that's like, okay, congratulations. That now means your family's going bankrupt. Income inequality is creeping up the income ladder, and that is, say you and your husband make really good livings in New York. You played by the rules. You're outstanding. You were great in high school. You were great in college. You went to an elite college. You worked your ass off. You got the right certification, made the right contacts. You got a great job. You're making $200,000. Your wife is making $300,000. You're making $500,000. You can't afford to live in New York. A person making $500,000 in New York probably makes enough money to have an incremental tax rate of 40%. So that's $300,000. They're taking home $25,000. Say they go out on a limb and decide to have a kid, so they need a 2-bedroom, maybe a 3-bedroom. Their take-home pay is $25,000 a month. That apartment is $15,000 a month. The going rate right now for childcare of a person who's documented in New York is $150,000 a year. And good for them. I like to see people doing real work get paid well. You can't live in New York unless you are literally, people ask me all the time, what's it like to live in New York and London? And I very tersely say, it's amazing. Just make sure you can lubricate it with millions of dollars.
Yeah, totally.
This is why I left in New York. I lived in New York, and this was up until 2011. My partner was working at Goldman. I was starting to hit my stride professionally. Even though I was a professor, I was starting to get speaking gigs and book things. We were making like $800,000 a year. And I thought, oh my God, $800,000 a year. And on a regular basis, I would think, oh, we can't pay our credit card right away. I'm like, what? And we weren't living large. Okay. And now it's even worse. I hear about an average one bedroom is $5,500. I go in, I buy a drink somewhere. It's $24 for a Makers and Ginger at the places I go to. How does any young person that doesn't have their parents' money live in New York? I don't think anyone has a birthright to live in New York, right? You don't have a birthright to stay at the Rosewood. But the problem is New York's economy will not continue to thrive if it can't attract scrappy, energetic people with a diverse background. Our economy will become a butler economy like London, where it's just a small group of service people servicing wealth made somewhere else. You need that mojo. You need scrappy, aggressive people who feel like they can make it in New York if they try hard and watch their budget. Those people are gone. New York has become basically the Rosewood, and it's amazing if you can afford it, but affordability really is a huge issue here. I'm meeting with, I'll ask him if I can use his name, but I'm meeting with this iconic guy who's got way more resources and contacts than I do about what types of programs could potentially attract more young people and get them, and make it affordable for them in New York. But you make an exceptional living. Your husband makes a good living. You're on the ground there. What's it like trying to get by in New York?